My name is Julius Lelei. I'm a third year student at Daystar, pursuing journalism. Concentration is just the PR and electronic media. And today my guest, you can proceed and introduce yourself as well kindly.
Thank you. My name is Ron Clifford. I am the lead presenter and also senior journalist with BBC Africa, mainly working with the BBC Swahili, based in Nairobi, operating across Africa.
Thank you so much. Let me give an overview of what we are going to talk about. There is like a growing concern across media organizations, especially on how the news are being reported. Maybe the media is failing to act as a watchdog for the public, defend the ordinary citizen against abuses of power, maybe by revealing the graft and scandals that are happening not just in our country but several places. And more so, media houses have been like labeled, they exist for money making. It's like a business entity, for instance. And of course, this is failing the journalism professionals, because what you are taught in school perhaps is not what happens in the industry. It's a fact that journalists face a number of constraints, which include pressure from owners, poor terms of employment and remuneration, media competition, harassment by politicians, poor scheme of service, the rise of citizen journalism and bloggers' inability to enjoy their professional freedom, to play the watchdog role and help expand a democracy space. So basically, that is an overview of what we are going to talk about. And if I proceed with my first question, I just want to understand you, Mr. Ron Cliff, from the industry, and how you understand what are the ethical concerns that comes to your mind as I've just presented that particular abstract. If you can go on, please.
Thank you, Lele. I think the first concern that any journalist will have is the pressure to balance business and ethics. That is the number one concern, especially for commercial media houses. I work for a media house that is fully funded by taxpayers, by the UK taxpayers. So situation is slightly different where I work. But for any commercial media house in Kenya, across Africa, or all over the world, the major concern is, the growing intense, fiery, and very unrelenting relationship between the media owners who, they've set up a business just like any other person. They need profits, they need margins, they need money. That is their end goal. While in school you will learn that, media is there to educate, to inform, to entertain, all that. No. Somebody who sets up a media house doesn't really care about that. All they care about is profits, money. And now the business world is very unforgiving to media, because today, I'll give an example. For instance, in Kenya, one of the biggest advertisers is microchip company, communication microchip company, Safaricom. So Safaricom is the biggest advertiser. So do you want to mess up with them, even if you have a very juicy story about how they have, messed up some people with their accounts or their lives? You cannot touch them, because you touch them, they say, okay, we will pull out business from your company, and then that affects revenue, and the media owner doesn't care. Like, must we carry that story? No. If that story will cost us 10 million, why must we carry it? In fact, the owner will ask you, where do you expect me to pay you from, if you're touching the same nerve that feeds you? So that is the biggest challenge facing media house today. And yes, there's a number of other challenges, including but not limited to the emergence of citizen journalism, as you've mentioned. Juzi in Kenya, we had the case of the CDF who died in a helicopter crash. And before any notable media house had shared the story, people were already reading about it on blogs, on social media. So social media and these online platforms, that is the other biggest threat to normal traditional journalism, because yes, these guys don't have ethics. You see, for instance, me, before I publish a story, I'll need to verify it, to verify claims. I'll need to make sure it's balanced. I'll need to make sure I've spoken to authorities. But bloggers don't do all that. I mean, they get an image, somebody sends you an image from West Pokot claiming this is the helicopter burning. A blogger doesn't care. They go ahead and publish it. So by the time I have done all my due diligence now, I come to publish that story an hour or two later. Who has the greatest traffic? Who is believed more? Because the blogger went ahead with it without all that, because they are not ethical. They are not guided by the media. They are supposed to be guided by media laws and ethics, but most of them don't abide by them. So that is a big challenge that faces traditional journalism. Definitely, the economy is not good in most parts of the world. And because of that, that is a challenge number 3 that faces journalism today, because the economy is not really good. Media houses are struggling. There are so many job cuts, and that affects the quality of journalism that we churn out, the quality of stories that we do. Because if you are not, I always tell people, if you don't have a coin in your pocket, you can easily be compromised as a journalist. So you find journalists working here in Kenya, like Standard Media Group. Some people have gone for 5 months without pay. If today somebody, a politician, will tell you, come do this story for me, I'll give you 10, 20, 50,000. You've not paid your rent, bro. And then you hear somebody wants to give you 50,000 to do a story. We have to be realistic. Journalists are also human beings. So you will be coerced into, doing some stuff that are unethical. And so I think, yes, basically those 3. But the 4th one, which is also a major challenge, is interference from the government itself. Most governments, especially in Africa and other developed countries, don't like to be questioned. They don't like to be questioned. They don't like to be put on task. They don't like to be exposed. And because that is what journalists do, you find yourself in very hot soup all the time. And in most African countries, we've seen journalists either being jailed or, disappearing, being killed. And most of the time, the finger points back to the government. So interference by politicians and governments is a major threat to the ethical standards of our work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aaron Cliff. I think you've given a very detailed explanation on the same. And maybe in your observation, I have had very good points. And especially, one thing that came also out is perhaps about like media houses, especially maybe in Africa, whereby it's more about business rather than like maybe reporting the real story. Because you just mentioned, assume a company like Safaricom, if they have an issue, maybe you've done an investigation, you're a journalist, there's something that you found out, but still your superiors will not allow that story to go out. Reason being, that is like if they pull out from advertisements, probably your company will be pulled down. So yeah, that is wonderful of you. So let me go to this point. I believe somehow, actually you just mentioned it somehow, but again, let me ask you the issue about, forget about maybe salaries being delayed, but there's an element of not paid like well. As a journalist, there's a profile you create of yourself by the fact that you are seen on the screens. People expect you somehow, you should be having something in your pocket. But if you are not really paid well, does it affect your work as a journalist? What is your comment?
Journalists, just like any other profession, like all the other professions in the world, they are human beings first. I think that is, to me, is the most important aspect, that a journalist is first a human being. Either he is someone's daughter, someone's son, he is someone's uncle, someone's auntie, he is someone's dad, someone's husband, someone's wife, someone's mom. And so they have bills to pay. They have a normal life to live. That is very crucial for when we start this conversation. Let's first put it that way, that journalists are normal human beings. And normal human beings cannot operate. I mean, doctors are on strike currently in Kenya. Not because of anything, because they want better remuneration. And journalists, they deserve exactly the same. In fact, some journalists deserve even more because they work in very risky environment. People who are doing investigative journalism, for example, you know, you deal with drug lords, you're dealing with bandits, you're dealing with Al-Shabaab and the likes. But to be honest, yes, low pay or poor pay affects the quality of journalism in our today's world, because somebody who is hungry is angry, and probably they're not doing, you know, they're not in their best element. So, and you can easily be swayed. You know, like I said, if today you work in an environment where you're not paid well, you know, you're paid peanuts. Some correspondents, for example, are paid very little. You do a story that involves you traveling or maybe going to you know, far ends, and you know, you spend 2 or 3 days doing that one story, and then a media house will pay you 1,000 bob per story. Or yeah, most media houses in Kenya pay their correspondents. Those people who send in reports from mashinani, 1,000 bob per story. The ones that are paid better are paid like 2,000 a story. So you can imagine 1,000 bob per story. Huyu ni mtu amestruggle, ametembea, amezunguka, and then you're paid 1,000 bob per story. So most of the time, what happens is you find politicians, businessmen, influential people can easily change the narrative of some stories, because journalists huko mashinani, you're huko West Pokot ama Kapenguri, yes, in West Pokot, ama you are in Todonyang huko in Turkana. One, you don't even have a car. So there is something that has happened, you're in Lodwar, something has happened in Kakuma refugee camp. You depend on either the county commissioner's car or the area MP's car, you know, when he's going there to take you. So if he is the one, for example, to be blamed, do you think you will blame him in your story? He's the one who's given you a lift. You can't, because if you try to blame him, the next time he will not give you a lift.
Sure.
So you find our reportage is compromised, because the person you're going to cover a demonstration, people are complaining about poor roads. The MP gives out his own car to take you there. So you go there. Those people are actually complaining about the same MP. But when you're editing that story, you're not allowing him to be hit hard. You have to moderate it, because it's him who gave you the car. His driver is the one who took you to the ground. So again, that affects our journalism. And basically because you are poor and you're not paid well. And this person has money and they can easily buy you, your family, coffee, tea, you know, they can make your life better. Yeah, so it affects the quality, and most of the time you find the quality or the good journalism, the ethical journalism is compromised because of poor pay.
Thank you so much again for that response. So let me ask you on this one aspect. Perhaps you are doing a story, and for you, because you work for like a global organization, well, you have other competitors, the likes of BBC, DW, this is Sky News, there is CNN, maybe France 24. Maybe you're doing this particular story, but somehow you find there is another journalist, perhaps from DW, who is investigating the same matter. And perhaps he's ahead of you. So that means DW might report on that particular story before maybe yours goes to be edited and everything else to be done. At that particular time, do you find yourself, maybe you are under pressure and perhaps you end up releasing data, just reporting on a case that you've not completed your investigation, just because there is pressure from other media houses reporting on the same matter?
Well, you know, journalism is about beating deadlines and timing. Everything we do is about time, is about being at the right time, at the right place, doing the right thing at the right time. with the right attitude and all that. And so, yeah, pressure is definitely going to be there. But I think where you work, the standard, the modus operandi, the standard procedure where I work is you need to get it right, not to get it fast. So I know when you work for commercial media houses, there is always pressure in trying to get it out fast. But I always remind journalists that don't succumb to that pressure. The pressure is who gets it right fast. And that is why, for example, locally, people will mostly, I'm not trying to blame the Star or to make them look mischievous, or the Standard or People Daily and all that. But I mean, research shows that majority of Kenyans tend to believe the Nation. Okay? And so it might not always be the first. You will go, for example, and find a blogger. Cyprian Nyakundi has posted something. And then somebody will ask you, Nation pia wamepost. Let's check Nation's page. Why? Because they, for a long time, they have built a legacy of being truthful for a long period of time. So, globally, all over the world, the BBC, for example, has built that legacy of being truthful. And our number one concern is it the truth? Is it right? Is it the right thing to report? So it's not about being fast, it's about getting your facts right. And that is why, if today somebody was to report, God forbid, the Pope has died, everybody will first wait for BBC to report it. Not because of anything, but because over a period of time, they've built a legacy of trust. And so people trust the BBC. Out of all the global media houses, BBC comes top when it comes to being truthful and being trusted. So, and that has been generated because of that culture that I'm talking about, of just don't be fast, be right. So that is the difference. Most commercial media houses are about, let's run with it fast today. Bloggers are wanakimbiliana hiyo, who will break it fast. But for us, it's about breaking it the right way.
Thank you so much. Actually, you made a very significant point. Get it right fast, rather than just get it fast. So, which is actually like a moral standard, and of course, observing the ethical standards of journalism. So, do you suppose maybe AI, artificial intelligence, is a threat to journalism and journalists, or is it a welcome complementary?
I look at it from two different perspectives. One is we can't fight technology. So AI is here with us. Will AI take over journalism? No. Journalism will remain way past AI. But AI, as a tool, it can be utilized and used by journalists for a very proper way. I mean, for example, when you're doing research, you need AI. It can help you. When you're doing copies these days, AI can help you when it comes to language, translation, and all that. But AI cannot in itself take over the work of journalism. No, journalists will remain to be journalists. But journalists will embrace AI in their works, And today, most of us, just the other day, Google, for example, said they're working on their translation and improving their AI translate. And so you find that will come in handy to help journalists, because today you can be a journalist working in sub-Saharan Africa, like here in Kenya, but you're working for French outlets, and your French might not be very good, like the people who work in some West Africa or some parts of Central Africa. So again, AI will help you when it comes to looking at your translation, your copies, and all that. Once AI is really up to par with French translation, for example. But does that mean that now you will forget doing copies and going out and doing interviews? No. Journalism work is more beyond the work of AI. So AI is an important element in our work, and it's there to stay. Like I always say, a few years ago I asked my cab guy, I traveled to Paris, and when I came back, I told my cab guy, wow, I've come from a country where, you just use your phone. There's this app people are using and you get yourself taxi. That was Uber back then. And then my Kama akanicheka sana. I was like, no, that cannot happen in Kenya. Nani atakuwa na bando? Sisi hata tunanga bando madriver, and then a few years later I met Kama, in an Uber Bolt branded car. I was like, Kama, kwani kulienda aje? Akasema unajua hii kitu ni gumu bwana, tulishindwa kuipiga vita, sasa tumekubali. So that is the thing about technology. You can't fight it, so we can't really say, we are against AI and all that. AI is here with us, we have to embrace it. The thing is, we have to find a balance between good ethical journalism and how we can then use AI in our ethical work. And I think once you get that balance, we're good to go.
Sure. Thank you so much. Let me ask another one. In terms of editorial managers, like what do they consider mostly when maybe employing young journalists who are just joining for editorial positions?
Well, that is very different depending with individual media houses. They have their own house policy, principles, and all that. But I think for me, key elements should be passion. Journalism is not really about, you go to school to become a journalist. It's about you having the passion to tell stories. You must be passionate about telling stories. Because if you're not passionate about telling stories, it will really be difficult for you to maneuver, the big waters of journalism, the murky waters. It's not easy. This is not a career for the faint-hearted. People who are just there for, these days I see girls and boys, young girls and boys who say, I want to be a journalist because I want to be famous, I want to be known, I want to have TikTok followers. And I look at them and I'm like, you're in the wrong profession, bro. Like, sure. That is not how, this profession is very demanding. Very. I am a TV presenter. Your life is aligned in a certain way. There are things you can't do. There are things you have to do them in a certain way. Your freedom is curtailed. There are places you can't just walk in. All that. When you start thinking of all that, then you realize that, okay, this thing is difficult. It's not the way I'm looking at it. But also, journalism is very wide. There's TV, there's radio, there's newspaper, there's online, and it's still broad. You told me you do PR. That is part of journalism. PR, marketing, all that is part and parcel of journalism. And so it's really broad. It depends with where your passion is. I always tell people, ask yourself, what exactly do you want to become? Are you a behind the scene person? Are you somebody who is really creative and you want to just take nice photos or very creative videos? Or are you somebody who wants to be on screen, you want to be seen, to be heard? You want to put your face out there? Can you handle that pressure that comes with that? You need to ask yourself that. So it's really about, so when managers are hiring, depending with what exactly they are looking for, because unlike back then when you just say, I'm hiring a journalist, these days it depends. Are you hiring somebody to do your online content? Are you hiring somebody with what particular skills are you looking for in that person? I think that's very important for me. Skills, because if you need somebody who is a good photographer, for example, you need to go for exactly that. But if you get somebody fresh from college who's done everything, so they've done broadcast, they've done print, they've done online, they've done Swahili, they've done English, and then they're all over. Yes, they're good, but where is their passion inclined to? There are people who, for example, don't have a very keen eye, so they can't be photographers, because photographers need to think with their eyes, and this person can't. There are people who are very wordy, like they can play with words, and they're very good for print, for example. People who can pen very good stories. And then there are people who are very creative with pictures, and they can make nice videos and stuff, and play around with those videos. Those are good for a particular role. And then there are people like us who are just good before camera. Put a camera in front of us and tell us to talk. And boom, you've woken up our world. So I think for me, particular skills for particular roles, I think that is what media managers need to look into.
All right. Thank you so very much on the same. Let me ask you, maybe for someone who is aspiring to begin their career, basically for me, I find it hard, especially watching local news, because of the way they are projected, when it comes to maybe the political angle that is taken, perhaps the divisiveness of our journalism and what is brought out by the media houses. But for me, I find it interesting, perhaps watching on these global media houses actually I watch BBC, DW, the France, CNN maybe perhaps. And for me, most of the matters that I understand most is external matters, things to do with the Ukraine wars, anything that is happening in the US, the Congress, and those are subjects of my interest. Do you suppose I'm in the wrong field? Maybe I should focus more on internal matters rather than just on external ones?
No, not at all, not at all. It all depends again with your passion. If that is what you're passionate about, then you see you are in the right field, because we need local people who understand international matters. We need local people who can break down some of those very complex international politics, and make them easy to understand. So it makes sense if that is your area of passion or that is your area of interest. There's really absolutely nothing wrong with that. The thing is, when you're talking about comparison between local and international media, there are a number of factors that make the news you consume from international media being sweeter and more appealing. One key element is resources. While Citizen and KTN and NTV and K24 and KBC would like to cover the Israel-Gaza how they think they should cover, do they have the capacity? No, they don't. The BBC will send a whole crew to Gaza. Citizen cannot. They don't have that capacity. And so that is the difference. You find these other media that have huge budgets, while if something happens in Tanzania here, the BBC can send a whole crew. We already have a team there, but we can still send some crew here to go and help them in capacity building. But will local media be able to do that? No. At times, even locally, there is a big something that has happened in Mombasa, and you find the media locally is struggling to get their people down to Mombasa. But the BBC will easily fly people, put people in a plane and fly them the same minute and take them. While a media house like KTN, which is currently struggling, will tell people take SGR in the afternoon to go to reach Mombasa in the evening, so that you can start your reporting tomorrow. While at that time, the BBC has put us in a plane. So when it comes to capacity, financial muscles, international, they have that. And also they have time. At times in our media houses, because content is being rushed, there is a program called Africa Eye. One episode, they can take between 6 months to 1 year to film one episode of Africa Eye. So you look at the production element when Africa Eye is releasing its one episode, and you're like, wow, you watch those 15-30 minutes, you're wowed by the journalism. But what you forget is that it took them 1 year to produce it. So you go and expect the same can't happen with NTV, for example. Yes, I'm not saying they're not doing excellent pieces, they are. But can Nation Media invest a whole year of investigating into one story that will air for 15 minutes? Most of the time, no. They will want something that, we can do within 2-3 weeks and be able to air. Because again, content is not so there's a totally difference, but there is room for everyone in this sphere. Every one of us can fit on their own place and in their own room. So if you think this is the direction that you would like to take, go for it.
Thank you so much. Somehow I think we should be winding up. We can just continue talking, but I just want us to wind up the formal interview because I will have some other personal questions. So perhaps just in your closing remarks,